in. So we're Blue Frontier, working in partnership with Go Digital or Southampton Bid. So this is Rachel, who I don't think any of you will have met yet because she's not been to any of these. So Rachel's one of our graphic designers. She's going to do the talk today about brand awareness. So thank you, Rachel.
Well, thank you all for coming. I don't often do presentations like this, so please feel free to interrupt me, or I'd quite like to be quite informal. So yeah, if you've got any questions as we go along, just stick your hand up or just shout out or make a noise or do something to get my attention. And yeah, we'll go through. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about brand awareness. Hopefully you all know why you're here, and that's what we're talking about. And just kind of go through what brand awareness actually is, how we can improve our brand awareness for your brands, the design elements that go into brand awareness and what makes up your brand, and how we can measure that all the hard work that we've done on our brand is actually working for us. So what is brand awareness? So this is how familiar your target audience is with your brand and how recognisable it is. So it's not just about what your logo looks like and whether someone can pick it out of a lineup. It's more about kind of the colours that you use to show who your brand are and what you represent, the typography that you use in your marketing materials and on your website, and the tone of voice that you use in your social media, your Google adverts, the emails that you're sending, anywhere where your customer is interacting with your brand. That all needs to merge together in order to fully kind of reinforce your brand and what your message is. It can also be about like the experience that your customer has with your brand. So whether that's a product that you sell or a service that you offer, that experience should be continuous throughout every point that they interact with you. So I've got a few examples. This is just indicating how colours can represent your brand. So I don't know if, hopefully, most of you recognise that these are the colours that Google use. So a lot of the time, you don't need to see a logo, you don't need to see Google written out. The colours already make you think of the brand. So they have a very strong recognition, and 91% of people can actually recognise these colours. So they are quite impactful for your brand. Do they? I thought they might have done, yeah, it's, you know. Another one that hopefully is a little bit more obvious, Cadbury's has just done a campaign to do with age awareness and losing your voice. So they've taken all of the words and their branding off their packaging, or their main logo, but because the purple is quite iconic to Cadbury's and their logo, you know, their glass, 1.5 glasses in each bar, that's so iconic that if you went into a shop, you would still see that is a chocolate bar. There's nothing about it that would make you think, oh, I'm not too sure what this product is. You'll see it straight away. Another example is Apple. Obviously, their logo is an apple. There's no wording on there. You kind of know straight away who it is. The grey that they use is quite iconic, although it probably doesn't show up very well on the screen. But their brand is so strong that it's caused a lot of their consumers and their users to be very loyal to their brand, and that's very important to them. A lot of people that have got iPhones probably would carry on using an iPhone if it broke or if something happened to it, because they'll carry on using that product because they're loyal to that brand. And a lot of that comes down to the brand recognition that Apple have and the status of their brand and everything that they've put together that works into their brand. Obviously, like as well, Apple aren't necessarily the best products on the market. Their laptops are quite expensive. Sometimes the software doesn't work. It's not compatible with other things. But they've still managed to become one of the biggest technology companies in their sector. And although, you know, there's a lot of elements that go into that success, having a really strong brand and having that recognition in their users and the loyalty has allowed them to propel themselves forward and really get to the top of their game. So that's just how important your brand can be for the success of your company. So how can we improve the brand awareness? So there's certain things that make up your brand, and that's your brand identity. So it helps you stand out from your competitors. What makes you different? If your product was lined up on a shelf, why would I pick that one other than one of your competitors? What's making you stand out? So there's about 4 different things that you can think about when it comes to your brand identity. That's really important. That helps you stand out from the rest of your competitors. First one is your mission. So you should have a strong mission statement when you're kind of thinking about your brand. What are you setting out to do? What are you trying to change? Or what is your customer going to get from your brand? Innocent Smoothies is a nice example of this. Theirs is make natural, delicious food and drink that helps people live well and die old. So that's their mission statement. And then this kind of is shown through their brand through a couple of different elements. So their logo, for one, is an angel. And I was running through this presentation with my manager, actually. He'd never realised that the Innocent logo was an angel. So obviously that's kind of very innocent and purity, and it invokes that idea just from the iconography that it uses. The typeface that it uses for its logo, the Innocent, is also very rounded. So it doesn't have hard lines to it. It's not very kind of impactful. It's softer. It's more natural. And then even the imagery that they use in their branding on their website and in the TV adverts that you might see online, they have this kind of backdrop of nature in fields and greenery in the sky, and it all is used to kind of invoke that natural essence to it, so that when you're in the supermarket and you're looking at all the drinks everywhere, that's what's going to catch your eye, because you're going to be subliminally thinking about all these different things that make up that product. And then another one is your brand values. So these are the ideals that your company lives by. What are your non-negotiables? If you were going to go into business with someone else, or you were thinking about bringing a new product to market, what are your ideals? What would you never go against? So a nice example of this is Lush. They have 6 different ideals, which is the freshest cosmetics, 100% vegetarian, ethical buying, handmade, packageless products, and fighting animal testing. And if you go into one of their stores, quite often they've got the fighting animal testing up around their stores, so that's obviously very important to them. They sell products which has got that on their packaging. A lot of their products don't come with any packaging, so it's very kind of for the environment. Often if you pick a bath bomb or something, you can put it in a plastic bag, or a paper bag, sorry. So it's very much kind of, there's no plastic. It's all about that kind of ethics and it all being fresh. And a lot of their products come with stickers on them that says about who's made the product. So it makes it feel a lot more kind of, I'm putting a face or a name to the product that I've just bought. So it's all about, keeping that brand throughout everything that they're doing. A lot of their stores are very similar, so you're always getting a consistent experience no matter which Lush store you go into, whether you go into the one in Southampton or one on Oxford Street in London. They're all very much the same. Another one is your personality. So this is how your brand, how your customers can relate to your brand. Is your brand's personality similar to their personality? So it's a set of traits that the target demographic can enjoy. So in order to kind of define your personality, you need to be thinking about who are your target audience and what is their personality like? What would their values be? What would their mission statement have to be if they each had to sit down and write one? How does that translate to your products? Because you want to make sure that your customers are relating to what you're selling. Often your personality can come through in your social media channels. It doesn't always have to be a positive association. If you have, quite a cheeky brand personality, you don't always have to be across your social media saying thank you for your question. You can be a bit rude, you can be a bit cheeky, because it gets people talking. It's funny. Like Wendy's is a burger joint. They're mainly in America. I've only seen a couple over here. But I bet they have a lot of followers from places where they don't even sell their burgers, because they have a strong online presence. That means their content's being shared by other people and they're getting their brand name out there. So if you were to ever pass a Wendy's, you might think, oh yeah, I've got that association because I've seen it on my social channels, and I might actually stop in there and see what it's all about. So your personality doesn't always have to be the politest, the nicest. If you want your customers to find you funny, and you think this is what my customers are going to find funny, and they relate to that, then you can build up a strong presence in that way. And lastly, your uniqueness. So what makes you different from the rest of your competitors on the market? Why is your product the one that they should go for above all else? So your unique selling point. A good example of this with their brand is Waitrose. Now, Waitrose and John Lewis have just rebranded, so they're Waitrose and Partners or John Lewis and Partners. Their unique selling point is their partnership business model. So each one of the people that work for Waitrose and John Lewis get shares in the company when they join, and the value of these shares go up, and they get a bonus every Christmas. It's quite a well-known thing now, and they've decided that that's what they want to push to the forefront of their brand. Now, really, that has absolutely nothing to do with the food that they sell or any of the products that they sell, but they know that their staff are the front of house, and they know that their staff are the ones interacting with the customers, and their customers obviously like a good experience when they go into their stores. The stores are clean and tidy, the shelves are stocked, and that's all down to their staff. So they know that without their staff, they wouldn't have such a strong brand and a strong kind of market share that they do. So it sets them apart from their competitors, and it's not necessarily completely about their product that they're selling, but it's about who they're selling to and what is important to them. So now it's time to show the world who you are through your brand. So how can we do this? So typography is an important factor. You want to make sure that you're not using typography that someone else has already used. Obviously, this is Harry Potter. Probably not the best one to use if you've got nothing to do with Harry Potter, unless you're a magician, in which case you might want to jump on the bandwagon and use some of the brand awareness that he already has. But you want to make sure that your typography is individual and unique to the product that you're selling or the service that you're offering, and appropriate as well. So if you're an accountant or something, you probably don't want to be using Comic Sans as your main font for everything. And you'll also get judged by every designer out there. And then another element is colour. So colour and colour meaning can evoke feelings for your customer. And emotions. So when you're picking your brand colours, you want to be thinking, how does my product or service make my customer feel? How do I want them to feel when they're using my service? So for instance, red is excitement, youthful, bold, and companies that use this are Vodafone, YouTube, Netflix. So a lot of kind of techie companies, they want to be strong, they want to be bold, they want to be really kind of out there. And sometimes a colour is all you need, and a shape to show who your brand is. So for instance, this is some marketing that Coca-Cola uses. Again, they don't need their logo there, they've got a shape of the bottle in the hands, but it's very small, it's not kind of the centre of attention. And so the impact that you can make just by having a shape and some colour that is recognisable to your customer can be enough to get that brand awareness and that brand recognition. And finally, your logo. So arguably this is the most important brand element that you have. It's your signature, and it's what identifies your company. There's kind of a few different elements that go into kind of having a good logo. It needs to be simple, it needs to be memorable, timeless, versatile, and appropriate. So there's a few different examples here. So the MasterCard logo, they've rebranded a couple of years ago. So they went from the very iconic MasterCard logo on the left to the slightly stripped back version on the right. So you can see how they've simplified it without moving too far away from their original logo. So any brand awareness that they had from their original logo hasn't been lost too much, because you can still, if you were to see the red and the yellow, so that's MasterCard's colour, and the shape of the circles, even if you took that MasterCard away, the actual text, you could probably just about tell that that's what that brand is. So they're playing on the brand awareness that they had before, but modernising it and bringing it into the 21st century. So the Underground is another logo which shows how a timeless logo can still work today, just like it did when the Underground first opened. A lot of people will know that this is the symbol for the Underground. When you're in London and the streets are busy, I bet you can spot an Underground logo for a mile away if you're trying to find where the nearest tube station is. So this just shows how a timeless brand, I mean, even now that logo doesn't look horrible, it's aged well. So it's important that when you're thinking about your brand and how far you want to go into the future, that you aren't just looking at what are the trends today for branding, what are the good fonts that people are using. You need to be picking something that is going to stand the test of time. Amazon is another example of a very strong brand that's versatile. So Amazon has a range of different products that they now offer. And even though in this example, for instance, the font's slightly different on each of them, the colours are slightly different, they've still got that continuous swoosh at the bottom with the arrow that they've put onto every single one of their products. So they don't even need to show the Amazon logo with Prime or with Fire TV. If you were to see that logo by itself, you probably would still know that that's an Amazon product. So they're using that iconography as well. So if you have a product or service, you don't necessarily need to have an icon within that logo that symbolises what you do. So Amazon don't necessarily need to have a package, or they don't necessarily need to have a book, like when they used to sell books and things online. It's more about how that icon relates to the logo and then how that can be pulled through to the rest of it. So your icon doesn't necessarily need to show what your product is, it just needs to fit with your logo. So an example of one that hasn't really gone very well, Gap rebranded last year or a couple of years ago, and they obviously had a very strong logo to begin with, the logo on the left. The colours, very obvious. A lot of people would recognise the Gap, the font. They had that emblazoned all over half of the products they sold anyway. And then they decided to rebrand to bring it more into the 21st century. But they picked a font for Gap, which is, I think that's Helvetica. And everyone was using Helvetica at the time. So the font they've chosen isn't even specific to Gap. It doesn't set them apart. They've put a gradient on the little box, which is very kind of the time and probably won't stand the test of time if they were to move forward for another 20 years with this logo. The logo on the right also looks completely different to the logo on the left. So any brand awareness that they already had for that left-hand logo, they've completely lost. If you were to put, side by side, you wouldn't even think that they were the same company. They just look like they've got the same name. So after a lot of backlash, they got a lot of social media bashing for this rebrand. And in the end, they said that, it was just a test and we just wanted to see what people thought. But they changed the store, they changed their website. So I think that was them just bluffing to get out of it when they realised they'd made the mistake. And after about 6 days, they changed the logo back to the original. So I think they soon realised that they deviated too much from their original brand. And talking about logos that are appropriate when you're designing your logo, you kind of want to make sure that there's no other connotations that could be seen in your logo, or people making stupid drawings of your logo, or even any hidden words that are in your logo that people might see as well. So it kind of needs to just make sure that it's applicable to what you're selling, it's clear, it's simple, it's timeless, and it's memorable. So how can we kind of make sure that all these elements are consistent? We need to make sure that our brand is consistent across everything that all our products, everywhere that our customer interacts with us and with the product or the service that we're offering. Customers always need to see the same thing in order to get that brand recognition and that brand awareness. Seeing something over and over and over again is the same is only going to build up that awareness in their memory. Taking us back to our Apple example, every Apple store that you go into is very similar. So you know what the experience is going to be. It's memorable. You always are going to get the same experience. Just like when you have a MacBook or an iPhone, they all look very similar. They all have that same finish to them. They're all very consistent across everything. You know the brand that you're dealing with. So you need to make sure that it's consistent. So there's a couple of points where your customer interacts with you that you kind of want to make sure are very similar. So your website is probably one of the biggest ones. You need to make sure that the website colours that you're using are consistent with your brand, that you've got your logo on there, that your content is is in the same tone of voice that you've used for your social media or anywhere else where you're talking directly to your customer. The emails that you might send to your customer, your email signature, have you got your logo in there? Have you got any weird colours in there that aren't necessarily to do with your brand? Social media is a big point where your customer will interact directly with you. So whoever's running your social media, are they using a good tone of voice? Do they know how to speak to your customers? Is it all consistent throughout so that if someone was to scroll back through your Twitter timeline, they can get a strong sense of who your company is and what you stand for? And then it even boils down to the Google adverts that you have. So is your tone of voice in your Google adverts correct, because if someone's searching for your product and they've not necessarily come across your brand before, they might be clicking on one of your adverts. You want to make sure that whatever offer or deal or however you're writing your adverts is the same as what they're going to see when they click to go through to your website. So it's not a different experience. They're getting the same experience from start to finish. So how do we make sure that all those things are the same? So it's your brand guidelines, and these are really important to make sure that everyone in your company is sticking to the same routine. So you all know what logos you're going to be using, you all know what colours you're going to be using, the tone of voice you're going to be using, and the typography you're going to be using. These are really important as well if you're outsourcing any work to an agency. So if you're having a website made, make sure that the designer that you're using understands your brand and they know what your logo looks like, how big or small it needs to be, what your primary colours are and what your secondary colours are. Don't let them just add in a big rainbow effect or big rainbow colours everywhere, because that's not your brand. You need to make sure that whoever's working for you is making sure that your brand is at the forefront. Often we'll put together some brand guidelines that look a bit like this, that just show the logo, the spacing, the typography, the font size, whether it's capitalized. And these are just very clear guidelines that you can hand out to anyone that's interacting with your brand for you to ensure that there's continuity across everything. So finally, how can we measure your brand awareness? So we've put in all this effort to make sure that our colours are consistent, our logo's consistent, and our messaging's consistent. And now we want to make sure that all of that has paid off and that our customers are being more and more aware of our brand. So direct traffic is a way that we can see how our customers are coming to our website. So hopefully if you have a website, you've got Google Analytics set up with it. And you can see the direct traffic that comes from Google. So direct traffic is basically someone that's typed in your brand name to get to your website. So for instance, if someone Googled Blue Frontier and they came to our website, that would be marked as direct traffic. So that customer obviously already knows your brand name. They're looking directly for you. So that means that they're aware of you as a brand already without you having to do any marketing or anything else to get them to come to your website. So it's a great way of, the more direct traffic that you have, the stronger that your brand awareness is. Your blog content can serve as brand awareness as well. If you've got share buttons on blogs that you write and people are actively sharing your content, that's a great way to get more of your content out on social media and then other people sharing that content. So you want to make sure that your blog content is engaging and then measure the number of shares that you're getting for each blog post. Are there some blog posts that are doing well? Are there others that aren't doing so well? And what are the difference between those two? So the more shares you're getting, obviously the more people you'll get seeing your content and the more people that will drive traffic to your site and hopefully engage with the services that you offer. And then finally, obviously a big one is social engagement and growth. A lot of people use social media channels these days to chat to the brands and services that they like, whether it's just to ask them a question, leave them a review, or talk about the product directly with someone on the marketing team. You can measure your impact on social media through these engagement metrics. So how many followers have you got? Are you growing at a reasonable rate? Are you gaining new followers? How can you gain new followers? There's certain social media practices that you can use to help encourage that growth. And so that's really kind of how you can improve on those social engagement networks. So kind of getting to the end now. We've kind of gone over brand awareness, what it is, what you can do to help improve your brand awareness and the different elements that make up your brand. So hopefully you've got loads of questions for me.
I've got a question